Hi, everyone. Welcome to Empowered Expression. I'm Suzi Dent, and I have an amazing woman to bring to you today to talk to us. Her name is Pat Armitstead. I'm going to read a few things because she's really amazing. I can't remember everything that she's done. She is the president of the National Speakers Association in New Zealand, or was. She had her own radio show and won 5 national awards. She's an accomplished author with 2 books under her belt and 6 co-authored books. She's transformed workplace well-being for 22 years and then some, and she's done over 1,000 keynotes. Pat, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted, especially with you being across the other side of the world at the moment. It's wonderful.
I am.
Congratulations to you.
Oh, thanks, Pat. Thank you. Now, we've known each other for a couple of years, only because of a random act of whatever you call it that I did popping down when you were doing a show. You were doing a show in Twin Towns, and I think you needed the doctor's coat and being a wardrobe stylist. We have a mutual friend, Melissa, who's a makeup artist in New Zealand, and she was in Australia at the time, and she reached out to me and said, "Hey, have you got this?" And I went, "Actually, I do." And I hadn't met you, but I'd known of you through Melissa from when you were working as a makeup artist, because you have many feathers in your bow. And I dropped down and I basically got to meet you really briefly in the middle of you running a show that you were doing down there, or a seminar. I think it was a bit of both. Dropped in a doctor's coat and I think a stethoscope and stuff that you needed. It's interesting, isn't it? When we're often in life, we're brought people to us and we don't necessarily know the reason, but we go with the flow. And I think when you go in the flow and you do things, and that was your first intro into me, which was great. What were you doing that day?
It was the Laughter Conference, which has been running for roughly 20 years, and I've presented most years here in New Zealand into that conference. And their main thing is laughter yoga, which is not my main thing, but I just love the whole energy of what they're doing. And on that particular time, I was doing a workshop. I can't think of the name I called it, but it was, I had a whole range of musical notes on sticks, and the song that the people had to perform to was Dr. Ticklebomb. And they needed to just do certain things in certain time frames to the music, acting out what was being expressed. Of course, none of them were actors, and it was hilarious.
It's like a great really building moment, doesn't it? And great, get the group together to really appreciate each other moment, which is awesome. Yeah. And you've done so many things. I find you, I've been following you, and we've been following each other over the last few years, and you're so inspiring in the things that you've overcome, and the way that you've dedicated your life to bettering yourself. And by bettering yourself and growing within yourself, you've shared this with other people, and the things that you do and the things that you talk about. We're talking briefly about some of the things you've spoken about in the workplace and the influence that you've had over the people that you've spoken to. I find as an older woman or as an older man, if we share our life experience to those younger than us, I like to do it, as do you, to help them get there quicker, to help them on their way, to help them heal, to help them grow, to help them be the best person that they can be. I'd love you to share with us some of the things that you talk to corporate about in your thousands of keynote, which is awesome.
I began my career as a nurse, and nurse for 20 years, and never realizing that this would be where I would be at this stage of my life. So yes, I was mentioning to you just before we started, I worked with a company recently, 450 executives from a company with 30,000 staff. This was my first Australian big gig when I moved back here. I just couldn't believe it. It's like, you're kidding me. It's like coming from New Zealand, where I'd lived for 20 years, 5 million people. And back here, it's like a different kettle of fish. Anyhow, so I secured this engagement and worked with them for 15 months, delivering a mental health in the workplace program, which was mainly about developing their keen listening skills and enabling brave conversation. So to be able to, if I ask someone if they're okay and they say no, what do I do then? So helping with that. And I was, every single time, well, in the past, for example, if I presented to a group of real estate men, typically they'd be all sitting there in their beautiful suits, left leg crossed over right and arms folded, because there was no way they were going to participate in this silly joyologist, whatever she might be bringing. And all of these men came to the table dressed, beautifully, but their arms weren't crossed. That was the first thing I noticed. It's like, you're actually open. This is really refreshing. And then as we continued, at the end of one of the early sessions, one man stood up and he said, I need you to know, Pat, that I'm going home today to be present to my wife. I didn't know until today, but my wife actually suffers with anxiety, and by now there's tears in his eyes. He said, and I didn't know. His peers around the table and they just gave him this stand. And, I just really got the intimacy was in the room. And while I've loved delivering keynotes and the thrill of that, I loved this even better. It's like all those years doing all of that was fine, but look at this and, where we headed with COVID and all the restrictions and drama that came with that, to do what I've been endeavouring to do. And now, so I just saw a real shift in consciousness. There was a change that I hadn't witnessed before. Another session, a woman was in the room, a very buxom woman, and it was about 10 past 10, and she reached into her bra and pulled out a pink box, and everyone went, and whooped. And she looked up and she said, oh, I'm sorry. She said, yes, I'd forgotten. Most of you won't know, but I'm a brittle diabetic. And I know morning tea is going to be a little bit longer, so I need to be adjusting my insulin, because I actually have an insulin pump in my body. And, this machine helps me regulate. So in that moment, everyone went, oh, wow, we get it. And before we moved on from that point, I said to the group, can we stop here for a minute? Because in this moment, do you notice how easily and readily you accepted the device and what it was doing? I said, I wonder what your reaction would have been like if, I forget her name, but if that lady had been having an anxiety attack. And it was a perfect moment then, because it immediately went to awkward. Energy level dropped, but we could speak into it. And one of the things that I think I realised during this was all of my time nursing, we learned to create really high trust environments very quickly. And I think that's one part of the magic of what I do, to be able to generate that high trust and let them know they're safe.
Absolutely.
Another man came from Canberra to Sydney. He's this younger fellow, about 35, flew from Canberra to Sydney to attend the event in Sydney, and he said, I wasn't going to come. He said, but I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's past 12. So something just went, all good. Say that again. So you had this young man.
This young man, he said, I actually wasn't going to come, Pat. My brother had suicided about 6 months earlier, and I just felt too confronted. But I woke up at 2 a.m. and decided I was going to go, so I ordered the plane, and he said I did all the prelim work on the flight down. And, people just started sharing with a level of intimacy that I'd not seen before. And they didn't know each other in the way that evolved over just that day. Like, all of these were 8-hour sessions. So there was this new edge, if you like, of intimacy into me, you see, and a knowing of each other, which shifted everyone's regard for each other. They just knew each other at another level. And one of the board members, I said to him, 30,000 people, how on earth do you manage that? And he's a bit of a workaholic, and he confessed to that, but he said, my time is just spent travelling the country, meeting all of these people and just demonstrating what we stand for, which is, if you see something happen, you own it. It's there for you to attend to.
Wow. That would have been...
and that could be any manner.
Wow.
Apologised and left the room. Yes. The one time he left the room and went across the road to people who were doing some cleaning of a glass overhang of a shop front, and I could see that he'd gone there. He returned. I said, so what was happening then? And he said, I said, were they your people? And he said, no. So they weren't his staff. And yet he had gone across. He had seen from the window that they were not working safely. And so he went across, oversaw what they needed to do so that they would do it safely. And he said, and now at lunch, he said, I'll go and ring the company that manages these people and advise them what happened and give them advice on how I think they should be up-leveling to keep their people safe. So there's been few times in my life when I've seen that level of performance, and consistently, all of these men were just incredible.
Oh, it sure is. Sometimes people don't want to be told, though, do they? Sometimes people don't want to be advised that they might be doing something in the wrong way. So it's getting that moment of them actually, for him, being able to drop everything, go over and go, I'm gonna teach you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to do it. Them actually listening, because he must have come across with the right air of authority, and then him following up, not just being a busybody sticking his nose in, but following up with the country to make sure that they put these things in place to probably save lives, is quite amazing. It's great being in that room. Authenticity is a buzzword that we hear all the time now. Being in that room with people really showing their true authentic selves and really opening up with very personal stuff, creates that, like you said, creates that trust and that environment very fast, and stops that crossed arm thing happening very fast. We have that in the film industry too, because you've worked in the film industry as well, and we create this family very fast because it's all about working and having a trust with each other. And it's why people, I think, get addicted to working in film, because they're in a family that bonds and has that real trust much bigger and faster than the corporate world really does. And it's not often that we find organisations that do that. So that must have been an amazing experience for you, to have that many people in the room, to have that sort of energy, to be the facilitator of that sort of energy.
Yes.
You would have been mind-blowing to be able to create such change for people, and for them to not even realise that they were having change, but them to have these, people would have been having aha moments and bonding moments, and oh my God, I didn't know that about you. It would have just been going off in the room like dominoes. It would have been amazing. How awesome for you to have experienced that as a speaker and a facilitator. That's just so cool. Now I'd like to talk to you about, you used to have a radio show. You started, this is in New Zealand, when you were in New Zealand. How long have you been in Australia for? Now that you're an honorary.
Well, I am Australian.
Okay, so you're Australian.
I am Australian.
And you went to live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Why? I know it's over there, but
an old story. Yeah.
So it was basically when you were younger, you went over to live in New Zealand.
And so
and then you created a radio show. Yeah.
1999. I went across there 23 years ago.
So the last 23 years
so
have been a period of growth and change in your life, and you discovering the you that you always wanted to be, maybe? Have you empowered yourself greatly in the last 22 years by doing all the things you've been doing?
Absolutely.
And communicating?
When I'm working with my clients, I tell them I want to lead them to be fully self-expressed and to be transformed, and for that transformation to be unrecognisable. So they appear in a way they would never have understood. So I had a series of losses at the turn of the century. The last loss was my partner of 20 years leaving with another woman. That shattered me, along with his last sentence to me, which was, "No, I don't love you, and I never loved you."
Wow.
And in that moment, I thought, if that's true, then everything I've ever known is not true. And so I disintegrated. But because of the choices I made, everything since then has been about my reintegration. My doctor wanted to medicate me, and I said, no, I have every reason to be sad. And so I found a holistic practitioner, and I went to a grieving seminar, and then I spoke to a magician in South Australia who wanted me to take laughter workshops to New Zealand. And it was in the middle of that conversation, there was just a little lull. And in that lull, I got a message. And the message was, oh my God, we've got radiology, pathology, hematology, but no joyology. I'm going to be a joyologist. And so there it was born. Is there a God? Well, was it my higher self doesn't really matter where it came from. And then the journey has been a pioneering one ever since, really. What is that going to be, joyologist? And how has it evolved? So the first 15 months, I did some pilot programs, experimenting. Anyone who stood still long enough, I talked to them. I gave about 200 talks in that couple of years. And that just helped me polish, refine, surge out what it was going to be. And within a couple of years, I had enough to have a brand and, a range of programs. Part of that early start, though, I met the Improv Bandits, a troupe of improv actors in New Zealand, Auckland, and I went along to their covert theatre, which was their theatre, and I went for 4 years, at least once a week and sometimes twice, and on many levels, they saved my life because there was humour that was being created on stage, unscripted, which just fascinated me. And I just was fed ideas. I'd pick up ideas. I could use that I could call a course that I could. I was just inundated with ideas. And improv, the rules of improv, as I learned it, are first thought is correct. All players are equal. Nobody wins if someone tries to win. And you need to be open to give and ready to receive. And that's how that dynamic works on stage. So I've been studying improv ever since. I just adore it, mainly because it gets rid of the censor. So I have dealt with, believe it or not, doubt all of my life. I wanted to be an artist, but Mother said, I think you should get a proper job. So I went nursing, didn't paint or create for 20 years. You can't really afford to be too creative in nursing. And then, so my study of improv in those early years in New Zealand led me to eventually an opportunity to have a radio show. So live studio, big commercial studio. Oh my God. I was terrified when I first got it. I pre-recorded for a month and then I went live. And it was called Radio Improv, Joy in the Moment. And much like we are doing here, I wanted it to have a formula and a thing that I would do every time. But I wanted people to tune into, this is a conversation. And I started to use and play with all of the learnings that I'd had in those first 2000 through to 2004. If I was telling a story, I might lean into the microphone and talk softly, lower my tone, pace it out and talk more slowly. So I could bring a lot of drama. And in the beginning, I found it really hard because you're talking to nobody. Like at the moment, I can see you. And I'm trying to, talk to the camera because the people are there. But radio's different. Radio's different. So there's no one there. And I had a sound engineer in the end, and I'd have guests. So there was that dynamic and learning to be really artful. And I think that was where I really started to be able to enjoy the dance of who Pat was. And I learned to love my voice. I had never liked my voice. I had so much voice training, and yet it was only in this platform that I thought, oh my, you sound okay.
Oh, you do?
Really fun.
That's I'm listening to you, and I've written a few notes actually just about this period of your life, because a lot of us we do sometimes get shattered by breaking up of a relationship. Sometimes or even being in the relationship can be incredibly disempowering. Ending a relationship is a difficult thing to do. Having it ended for us is a difficult thing to experience and go through. And you came out the other side of it, in your journey coming out the other side of it. And I'm reiterating this to you because I love to give people themselves back to themselves. You've shown me how determined you were to find you, how that sentence that you were given upon him leaving rocked your world so much that maybe, like you just said then, that you learnt to love your voice, maybe it shut you up in so many facets inside you. It shut you down and it closed your voice and it closed your inner voice. And then you improv. What a fun thing to actually find. And improv is so random. I'm kind of, a naturally funny person, for those who do know me. I'm quite witty and I'm really quick. And I've always been like that because life amuses the crap out of me. So, depending on where I am, I will come up with the weirdest, funniest improv things. But you've shown this determination to find yourself. You practiced and practiced and practiced being a speaker. You practiced finding things. On our journey, some people, I think, might find that, things just come, and so they don't realize until we actually have these conversations. You got to practice who you want to be and who you are. You got to find yourself. I call it my work experience stage, when I was on stage talking for nothing and emceeing for nothing and finding my funny. I've called it work experience. I did it for like 3 years for nix, because I loved it, but because I felt that I was in a work experience stage. And you trusted yourself. You listened. I talk about listening to the whispers. You listened. It came to you. The download came to you. Joyology came to you, and you paid attention. So many people don't pay attention to the whispers that the universe or God sends us. Yeah. You paid attention. You were open to it. And you had faith, Pat. You had faith in yourself. You had faith in the whispers. You listened. You had all these ideas coming to you. I love to talk about it, and so do you, about that. When we do listen to the whispers of the universe and we do have faith in ourselves and have that determination to just push forward and do better, we change the life path that we're on that was not empowering for us. It changes, and all of a sudden ideas come and people come and stuff comes to us, and we're just all of a sudden we're there going, wow, okay, I'm taking it on, and you're talking to us about you receiving all these ideas of what you should do and what's going on. And you, like you said, you learnt to love your voice and you learnt to love yourself, and you found yourself in this moment of time over a few years. You really found who you were. You trusted who you were. You let go and healed from the things that were said and done to you in the past, to really find who you were and start really stepping inside your power and your effect on others, and trusting. And sometimes we do voice work, I'm a singer. So sometimes, in the past, it's been a long time now because I'm happy with my voice. I remember when I first started doing singing when I was younger, it was like, oh my God, I don't sound like that, do I? That's awful. And I'm talking like a long time ago, and then you get used to it. I never knew I had a sexy voice, Pat, until maybe like 2 years ago. I had no idea my whole life. And then all my friends are going, oh my God, yes. Did you not know that? I'm like, well, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know I had a sexy voice. I had no idea. It's funny how we perceive ourselves and how others see us. But I just wanted to stop you there with your story and just celebrate to everybody else, just point out to everybody else that's listening and watching us, these are the steps that are necessary. These are the steps that you took to get you to help you along, to help you find yourself and to help you find your voice. And my God, when you found your voice, Pat, the things that you've done with that voice and the things that you've given to others. So now I've stopped you now. I'll let you keep going with your story. Well, sometimes we lose ourselves in our story.
Yeah.
Like we achieve things, and I'm a classic for doing this. I'll achieve things, and I'll achieve big things, and I'll forget to reward myself or to, in any way, shape, or form. I forget to pat myself on the back. I forget to take a breath and go, hey, wow, look what you just conquered, or okay, you've just written a book, or hey, you've just changed the world. I was, because of my past, so used to being an overachiever and trying to get attention of a narcissist mother that it was expected of me to achieve. And I was achieving to get attention, and I wasn't getting the attention, and I was still achieving. But because it was not acknowledged by others, I didn't acknowledge it in myself. So I just wanted to pay homage to you just then.
Oh, thank you.
And just acknowledge what an incredible woman you are and the things that you've done, because many people sit complacent in their lives and they don't take a risk and they don't have faith in themselves and they don't trust. And you push through some really hard times and some really bad times, and you found yourself and you found your voice and you started to love yourself. We hear that a lot, don't we? Self-love. And some people, they don't really get the really big meaning of what that actually is. And you're a classic, beautiful example of a woman who's really stepped into self-love and shares it on a daily basis with everybody. Oh, I'm getting teary. With everybody there. Oh, I'm getting teary. With everybody they come across. I'll let you talk now so I can get past my emotion with you. I just want to praise you, darling.
Yeah. At that time, in that period after he had left and what he'd said, I made two things. I made a commitment. Whatever comes up now in my life, I'm going to go to it. And then, while I had never said anything as unkind as what he said, I wanted my words to always be a balm.
I love that.
I wanted my words to be a balm. And so I studied NLP, Master Practitioner, a few other programs, all with the main intention to be more conscious of my language, to be, using that for good. And improv also helps there because it just gives you, I used improv mainly to perform on the stage when I was speaking, to be freer and to go with what comes up. I remember one time when I'm delivering a keynote, about 8 minutes out, I will say to the audience, are there any questions now before I do my closing piece? And this time there was 300 women in a room, and a woman in the front row, she said, Pat, I would love to hear more about your tour with Patch Adams. In that moment, 300 women moved forward. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't finish how I was going to finish. I need to talk to this lady. And so I did. And I shared a very poignant story, which had tears brimming for everyone in the room. But it was perfect, I just can't, that connectedness is what we need, not just in that dynamic, but here and now. And the way in which we can tell a story can shift people's thinking. From that devastating time, what happened for me was, because I got present to my life in a way I hadn't been before, paradox and synchronicity started happening side by side, challenge and support side by side, and hundreds of stories would unroll. Every time I set out in intention, something would happen. I remember once I took my car for a warrant of fitness over there, and he said, oh, we're really busy. You go off and have a coffee and we'll give you a ring. So off I go, teetering downtown in these gorgeous high heels because I'm short. And I think if I've got high heels, I'll look taller and slimmer. And I get to the shop a cafe, and I've already got a blister from these silly shoes. So I've got one shoe off, and I said to the lady behind the counter, "Have you got a Band-Aid?" "Yes," she said. So she gives me a Band-Aid. I plunk my things on the table, sit down, and I'm putting the Band-Aid on my offended toe. And I look up, and I haven't got a pair of shoes, but a man is standing in front of me, and he's holding my shoe like this. He's dressed all in cream. He's stunning. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is him. This is the new fella. This is him. He said, "Yours, madam?" And I'm like, "Oh, be still my heart." He said, "You know, the last time we did this, it was this glass slipper. And you know how that ended, don't you?" And I'm like, and then out of the corner of my eye came a very manicured hand, grabbed his ear, pulled him away, and I had to chase them both out to the shop to get my shoe back. It was his wife. So they're not all good stories.
Oh, no, that's a great story.
If we're not paying attention, we miss it.
Oh, absolutely.
We miss it. You know, so I have a lot of those, and I know now that I've got a 3-minute story, or I've got an 8-minute story, got a 7-minute. They're all in these little compartments, and they can be shared randomly, like with you now, or delivered in a sequence, you know, designed to do something, to invoke something in the audience. One of my favourite stories that I like to share is back when I was 16 years and 10 months, and I was nursing, and I went to bed bath my first patient. His name was Bob Hall, and Bob had come into hospital with 35 broken bones. A construction crane had fallen on him, flattened him. When he came into casualty, they gathered around and pretty much said, "It's not going to make it." However, 4 hours later, he was still alive. And so they took him to theatre, and he didn't die on the table as they feared he might. And so they're trolling him back to recovery. And the conversation is pretty much, poor beggar, he'll probably be a vegetable. So to everyone's surprise, Bob woke up in recovery and revealed indeed he was not a vegetable. And so the conversation changed again. And they said, 35 broken bones, he probably will never walk. Bob Hall was in hospital the whole 3 years of my general nurse training.
Wow.
He went home for the odd weekend, but he was there all that time. I saw Bob Hall every single day that I was on duty, whether I was rostered on his floor or not. Bob walked on 2 sticks to my graduation ceremony, stood up the back, and when the official bit was over, he put his hand up and he said, "I'd like to say something." So now I'm getting really scared because my mother is sitting in the front row and I have a bit of an idea of what Bob's going to say. So he comes forward and he's got a big scroll, 3 A4 sheets, and he starts reading out all the tricks and pranks and terrible things that I did to him over that 3 years. Every now and again, my mother would burst, "Oh, Patricia, you didn't." When he finished, he turned to me and he said, "You don't know what you did." And I kind of got it on one level. That was 1973. But I really got that statement in 2000 when my ex left. All right, it was like a culmination of all of these losses, cancer, a range of other things. And it just really came home to me And I could own what I'd been doing in a way I'd never really owned before. And really, those first few years in that recovery, my family hadn't spoken, still haven't since 1989. And I felt, and yet one of the pilot programs I did was in aged care. 29 residents between 65, and I know you'll understand this, between 65 and 105, they waited for me. And they would say things like, I wonder what she's got on today. I wonder what choice she'll have. Maybe I'd have a puppet, like Thomas. That I would run around the dining room flying. So to provide those interrupts for those people was probably one of the most joyous periods of my life, because they loved me and had no judgment. At a time when I thought no one loved me, they did. And you have that experience with the lady you take out every week, Sonia, to commune and bring joy to people in that age range is just extraordinary, and to engage with them. And this is the thing of the wisdom years, if you like. Two of the ladies in that rest home, June and Christina, when I used to visit, I would see them last because we had this little ritual that we'd go through. And I would say, all right, well, I better be going now. And Joan would say, all right, well, you be good. And then Christina would say, giggling, and if you can't be good, be careful. And then Joan would say, and if you can't be careful, remember the date. Right? And then they would burst into peals of laughter, their funny little joke, which I probably heard 50 times. And that was our moment. Right? We did that all the time, and the joke never grew old. And there's just something we're missing at the moment that this age group can support the next two age groups down to really take on what happens in that love connectedness. To wait at the door, right? They'd wait at the door. These two 83-year-olds would be at the door every morning when I'd be coming to do these laughter workshops with them. And 83 spinsters, and they'd be saying really loudly, because they're deaf and they talk a little bit louder than normal, I wonder what she's got on today. And I used to arrive and I would be in tears because I was still grieving. So I'd have cried on the way to work. I'd arrive at the place and tidy myself up in the car park, and then would hear that. It's like the three generations need to come back together again. We have lost touch with what elderhood is all about, and the gifts that come through that wisdom being passed down. And the gift of, you'll find no judgment in that age group. Right? They'll take you face value.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we should, well, there's got to be something we can do, Pat, to get younger generations connecting better with the older generations. And like you're going to visit in homes and stuff, and I've done the same sort of thing, not on the scale that you have, You were talking about Sonia. For those of you who don't know, I work as a carer in my spare time because I like to, because I have an amazing relationship with a very special woman. And we've become friends, and I love her. And I think we have to appreciate the gifts, like you said, that they can give us. You know, it's one thing. We're not just spending time with people. It's the information and the history that they can impart, and those little sayings, you know, like the last bit of the first bit, you know, if you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, remember the date. That made me laugh. It's like, you know, the first 2 bits I've heard heaps and heaps of time ago, and, you know, I was like, yeah, I get it. But remember the date. It's like, yeah, right. Well, that's the kicker, isn't it? It's like, that was amazing, you know. Sonia, my lovely carer, when the first day we spent together, we're driving in the car, and I'm talking to her, we're at a red light, and she turns around to me and she says, it's not going to get any greener, you know, referring to the light. And I hadn't heard that, and I pissed myself laughing. It was the funniest thing ever, because this woman, she, you know, she's gorgeous. She's young. She's a young person trapped in an older body. But all of a sudden I saw her fabulous sense of humor, and she saw that I appreciated that fabulous sense of humor. So I had her laughing. So I'm straight into my inner child, which I tap into quite regularly. So I'm talking to her about farts and wind, and, you know, all of a sudden we're singing songs together. I'm changing the words as we're going along, and she's gagging herself laughing. And that very first day we showed ourselves to each other, but she gave me like an old anecdote, like an older thing from an older generation, and it was just so delightful. And I hadn't heard it, like me laughing at you just there with you just then. This is what we need. We do need to connect with people. And maybe if you're out there, people, there's older people in homes, would love it if you just went and read them a story. If you just gave a bit of your time and went and visited and had a chat. I used to go, I looked after my grandmother for 15 years from the age of 27, and she had dementia, and I'd go to visit her as often as possible. And I'd just rub moisturiser on her hands, go give people a hand massage. Touch is really important. Go touch a stranger. Ask them first, of course, and not in that sort of a way. You know, get permission before you randomly walk into an old people saying, I'm going to touch it, I'm going to touch it. Make sure you get permission from the front desk first. But the camaraderie that you'll get, they will love to see you. They love to be touched, and just having a conversation is great. Where I'm living now in Chichester, the lady that lives next door is 93. And she's full on physically. She has trouble, but she has one of these motorised scooter things. She gets around, terrorises the neighbourhood. I met her. I said, oh, mate, take me for a doubler. I'll hop on the back, you know. I'll hang on the back and you can take us through the streets of Chichester. That'd be fun. But mentally, she's so alert and she's so on, you know. So I spent, you know, went over 5 minutes, spent 30 and learned all sorts of things about, you know, this person and that person and the conversation, and it's the connection. We need to give more of ourselves to others, and like you said, we need to keep hanging on to the older generation. And if we don't, lose a lot of what they have to offer, the sayings from the past, and they will accept you with open arms. There'll be no judgment because they'll be stoked to have someone to talk to, and boy, can they talk. But this is how you learn how to be a good listener. When you're around older people, because you just they won't take a breath, and you've got to just let them go for it whilst you're, you know, sitting there learning about things. So I think that's wonderful advice, and we need to get more people to do that. Thank you, Pat. This has been an amazing conversation. It's been really great learning a bit about your life. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. In closing, what advice, more advice, different advice, what have you got? What would you like to say to everybody that's listening about that you can impart? And I'm sure as a speaker of over 1,000 events, you have your favourite things or your wisdom. Because I'm not going to tell people what your age is, because age is just a number. But you do have a lot of life wisdom that you can impart to others, that you can impart to younger people and people your own age as well and older. So what do you want to tell us, Pat, to help us on our
Well, something that I've come to see this last 20 years or so is the heart that gives is the heart that gathers. When I moved to New Zealand, I worked for a private training company in the beginning before I transitioned into working for myself. And it was a private education facility, and the attendance rate was 35%, and so was outcomes. And they had a process to send these letters saying, get your sorry ass in here or you're out. And I thought, I'm not sending those letters. And I never did. And instead, I sat down with the students and got to know them, those who did come. And as I got to know them, I wrote them all a one-page letter. I was with that company 2 years, and I wrote 2,000 one-page letters, honouring, celebrating, congratulating where they were at the time. It was a computer training school. And when I left, the attendance rate and outcomes were 85%. So throughout all of that process, I caught people doing something right. I decided when I left there, this is amazing, right? The transformation that happened just because of those letters for Pacific Island, Maori, lower socio-economic group students were transformed by that mail. So I committed, right, until I can no longer do it, I'm going to send 3 pieces of what I now call glad mail every day. And it's random. I give out 3 pieces when I'm delivering a keynote. I might give one to the bus driver, to people in the supermarket. They're random. And I make up the night before what it is that I feel people want to hear from me, and that's what I write in the card. I have sent, in the intervening years, 25,000 pieces of glad mail.
You're amazing.
So, it's cost me $1, 50 cents to $1 for the cards each time. And it's probably been the biggest investment that I've ever made in creating that feel good for something else, because we don't get that kind of mail anymore.
No, and it's great to get a letter with
envelopes in.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's amazing
Yes.
to get a card, because, when we were younger, we'd get Christmas cards and birthday cards. We had Venetian blinds, and you'd stick them on the Venetian blinds, and you'd have, 30, 40 cards. And there was also the pressure of, sending, oh my God, they sent us a card, we've got to send one back, But we had all these cards, and now we don't. And I find with social media as well, when anybody on social media, like birthday times, wishes me a happy birthday and takes the time to actually write something, I will reply to every single person, because to me, that's a modern day card. And some people are really clever, and they send you the GIFs and the pretty things and bunches of flowers, and I'll always reply. I really hate it when people maybe get 15 and they do a bulk thing, and I just think, oh God, that's so lazy. I'm so blessed now that I get like 400. It takes me days to reply, which is great, and there's not bragging or anything. I'm stoked that, I have that many people around the world that want to wish me happy birthday. There's all these birthday cards, and then you've engaged with them, and then they, oh my God, she's spoken to me, so I'm going to talk back. So days, my birthday goes on for a week, and we're just going backwards and forwards with social media. But to me, that's the connection, and that's the modern day card now. And but having a card, my great aunt, it's her daughter, that's my cousin that owns this house, and she was my grandmother's sister, and she used to send me a Christmas card every single year without fail. She died 2 years ago. So I have had Christmas cards from her from England for decades. And she would make sure that she had the names right when I had a child, when I had a husband, and she would include them all. And I looked forward to receiving those cards, and I would open the mailbox and it would always be there. And as the years went on and we all stopped sending cards and all that sort of stuff, Auntie Hazel, she would always send me a card. And that had a huge impact on my life. And I absolutely love that that's what you've been doing. The random cards that you give people, do you just have like a little card inside an envelope and you get off the bus and you just hand it to them as you're leaving? Is that how you do it?
I've always got 3 cards in my hand.
I think that is such a beautiful thing to impart to anybody. So people,
I think
listen to Pat. On Pat,
I had a coach for those early years.
And you learned this off a coach? Did you learn? So each time you give a card, have you imparted this knowledge on other people? It's like, what is it? It's not, well, it's kind of sharing the love, really. Is it paying it forward? So I want to pay your idea forward to everybody and anybody that is listening.
Absolutely.
Take on. Again, I wrote this down. The heart that gives is the heart that gathers. So give of your heart, people. It doesn't take long to write a few nice words on a little card. And like Pat says, she's always got 3 with her. I'm going to start doing that. I absolutely love that. That's so very me to do. I love it. And I'm always going to remember that I got it from you, Pat, and I'll be able to pay it forward. And I'll be able to teach my son and his girlfriend and his generation to share their hearts and to share their love with random people just like that, and they will love it. So I think if we all if anything, you get anything out of this conversation with Pat today, take this on board and start doing this, sharing your love and being the heart that gives to gather other hearts and to help other people. And then other people will do it before. So we'll have this huge movement through the world, and we'll all know that we got it from Pat Armitstead. So thank you so much, Pat. That's beautiful. A beautiful, beautiful finish to our
thank you. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing part of your life with everybody that's listening. I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate you and the influence that you've had on so many people in your life. It's just astounding. And I'm very blessed to know you and have you in my life as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode of Empowered Expression. Bye.